Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hi, this is me, Neha again. I work for Walmart Labs. Just to give a quick intro on what Walmart Labs or Walmart Global Tech is. So we are a huge e-commerce organization across the world. We have online stores. We have online e-commerce as well as stores across the US and also across the world. Um, yeah, we have major customer base, and the main reason I chose this topic was uh, we uh, we attract customers all the time across the world, and we cannot afford our website or the store shopping to be down at any point of time. And how we plan to build the systems to be always up and available to our customers, and hold our customers uptight. We as always, we do not want to lose any of our customers, and how we build those systems, mainly how reliable and resilient these systems are. I'll be pitching in deeply onto these topics. Let me move on. Yeah, so these are the topics that I would be covering for today. Uh, Mainly the background on what resiliency and reliability is, and what are needed for an application to be resilient, and what are needed for an application to be reliable. Um, yeah, so mainly what is resiliency, right? In our day-to-day work, what we see is, so even if one component of a system breaks, it doesn't affect the customer shopping experience. The customer won't even know that something has failed, or there is something going on in the back end. So it is very important for the seamless experience for a customer. In my recent experience, what had happened was, uh, usually all our apps are deployed on two data centers. So even if one data center goes down, the application continues to function on the other data center. So what had happened was, we had deployed our application on three data centers. So for those of you who don't know what a data center is, um, mainly an application will be deployed we are using cloud. We have both public and private cloud. So these clouds are in different regions of the world. So we are using the regions within US. uh, so we have like central US and West US and East US. So what had happened was, we had deployed the application on all the three regions of the US, but what happened was, the application stopped serving requests on two of the regions. So we have like an FQDN at the top level, where the request gets routed to each of these DCs. So when two of these DCs were down, what we had to do was, individual DC level FQDN we used, and we routed the traffic to these DCs. So what I mean to say here is, even though like the application at the top level FQDN was not serving requests at the DC level, there were some tweaks made, so that traffic gets routed to each data center. So it was a seamless experience. The traffic still got routed across the DCs. There was no impact. The only impact was at the top level, the traffic was not getting routed. This was a quick change, and the teams took care of it. So mainly, like each component is so isolated that there is no dependency across each of these components. So even if there is a minor change to be made, it does not impact larger system. Um, Moving on, what constitutes resiliency? This I would be mainly discussing on the two topics: the design for failure and graceful degradation. So what happens within Walmart is we first plan on the product, like when I mean to say product, it depends on again the upstream and the downstream systems. So it's not just designing about one specific application. Who is sending traffic and to whom do we communicate to? Who are our consumers? Who are our producers? All these comes into picture. So even like the latencies and what streaming systems are getting used and how to make major use of those systems, all these constitute in the architecture planning. um, yeah, so I mean, not all factors can be thought of, mainly like the infrastructure failures. So all these like application level failures, we can use try catches, and it is like an iterative process. When something fails, you put in a fix for that code, say hot fix, or fix it in the long term. But infrastructure components, we don't know when the systems would go wrong. So we should plan for, say, network partitions. What if a data center goes down, or what if at the Torbit level, or what if at the Akamai level the network breaks? What if like the Walmart.com itself is not able to serve the traffic? So at each level, there should be redundancy. There should be no single point of failure. So a single point of failure meaning, so if an application is running on only one data center, or if it is producing to only one data center, so if the application goes down, the consumers won't be able to produce it, and there should be replication enabled. So even if the application is producing to Kafka, so if Kafka goes down on one data center, if the messages are replicated to the other data center, the consumers can move their offset group and consume from a different data center. So it is very important to design the systems in such a way that failure is considered. uh, okay, there can be a corner case where some failures are not noted, but then like the usual failures what we see, those should be taken into account. Okay, coming to the next topic, the graceful degradation. So here what happens is, again, when we send a request to an application, due to some reason, the application is not able to serve the request. Say the CPU is throttled. So say like a lot of requests are coming into an application, and there is a crunch for resources, or uh, or what happens is, when an application, say what I was giving an example of Kafka, if Kafka goes down, it is not able to produce and not able to consume, because Kafka is down on one data center, is what we have assumed. So what we can do in that case is some messages can be cached. Cache meaning an application can make use of a local cache, or at our Walmart, we have like a platform level tool where we make use of the caching layer, and like if the application is not able to serve the real-time request, we display a cache value to the customer. I mean, it need not be like an important attribute like price. Price cannot be an older value. It would be like a loss. So those scenarios won't come into this. But then like a content description or a product description, or product variants like sizes, so these can be like a cache value, and it need not be up to date. Uh, those things won't impact like the revenue for a Walmart. So graceful degradation, yeah. So those things would help in scenarios where like the site itself won't go down and we would be displaying the last available value on the site. Okay, coming to the application traits for what constitutes a resilient application. So we have like a microservice architecture. Earlier we had a monolithic architecture wherein like a large piece of application, multiple changes used to go into this application. And if even one functionality fails, it would be very hard to determine where the issue was and fix the issue. And it would be like a lot of changes, lot of teams getting involved, and every team had a different priority going on. Those changes had to be again like iterative. Some teams would require the changes and some team would wait for it. So all this led us to building microservices. In our org, we have like a Storm pipeline. For those of you who do not know what Storm is, it is like a distributed system. So there are few topologies deployed on this Storm infrastructure, wherein these topologies consume from Kafka, and then Storm itself provides like Bolt. Bolts are again individual components wherein they serve different use cases. So each microservice reads from this Bolt and it enriches the content and pushes it to Bolt again. So each bolt is like a sequential pattern. So one bolt would communicate the output to the next bolt, and similarly microservices would read from this bolt. So moving on to this microservice, it really helped us like diagnose what the issue was, and then like even if there was a small issue, it would not just blow up. We would solve it to an extent where it just resolved very soon. It took like the half the amount of time what we saw in monolithic applications, and it was very easy also to identify where the issue was, and like the blast radius also was very small when compared to the monolithic application. And this is also a mandatory thing for an application to be resilient. So what we have is like a centralized dashboard wherein, so this is specifically for our org. Applications deploy their apps onto this dashboard, and then there are a set of playbooks that runs to deploy some scripts for the servers that is running these applications. So when there is something wrong with the application, it can be either system metrics or application metrics. Application metrics mainly, I mean to say, is like the health check. It alerts whatever groups are deployed while onboarding that application to our dashboard. It alerts to those specific groups. So here whatever the FQDN VIP URL is the health check URL for the application. So what happens is these monitoring scripts, they keep running these health checks on the individual servers. So in case of individual servers, the host name or the FQDN is the middle part, what you see here, hostapi.stage.walmart.com. So those get replaced with the IP address of the servers on which the application is running. So for every like 15 minutes, the monitoring scripts keeps running these health checks, and they determine if the application is responding or not. So if the application, if the server doesn't respond for this health check, it alerts for the specific teams, and then the teams will have to act on it. So this way we can make sure that no application, no server goes down, and every server is responsive and it runs a copy of the application. So This also reminds me to bring about the load balancer. So this is similar to the load balancer ECV check. What an ECV check is, so in order for a load balancer to route the traffic to each server that is running an instance of the application, there is a check that the load balancer runs. So these checks, if it responds, it's like a heartbeat. If the server responds for the check, the load balancer will know, okay, that server is up, it is able to send response. Let me route a request to that. So that way, load balancer also makes use of health check, but that is called an ECV in case of load balancer. All right, coming to the telemetry. So telemetry, we have like the KPIs and the SLIs. So the KPI would be mainly, I think, mostly in our use case, it is used by the execs or the VPs. So that is like the key performance indicators. So what those are is like what is the business impact of a product and what was revenue gained from that product. But the service level indicators, so that is mainly used to determine the performance of an application. So here we are able to see the CPU. One is the dashboard for the CPU, and the other is the dashboard for the app checks. So let me talk about the CPU metrics. As I told, our applications, they onboard our org, they onboard their applications through DevOps dashboard. So this dashboard is pushing out some monitoring scripts, and one such monitoring script is the CPU. So what this script does is it goes over how much is the CPU utilization on a server. So and it continuously keeps tracking what the metrics are, and this gets stored on a database. So in case of database, we are using Graphite here. So and the visualization is the Grafana. So the Grafana pulls these metrics from the Graphite and it plots on the Grafana dashboard, and it is available for our users, like the users who are making use of dashboard to check how their application metrics are. So here I've given an example of CPU, but then there are also multiple other checks such as CPU, memory, load, disk usage, are a few of those. And along with this visualization, there is also an alerting that goes out when one of these gets breached by the threshold. Like the responsible teams are paged out to have a look at that. This is with respect to the system metrics. Coming to the right side chart that has the top module services. So this is our Kibana. So how Kibana is getting the data is the applications are making use of something called a scribe. So this was designed by Facebook. So this utility, what it does is it pushes the logs. Like the applications should subscribe to scribe, and they should be writing logs to a specific location. So the scribe using Logstash forwarders, it pushes the logs to Elasticsearch. So in between, there's again a queuing mechanism. We are using RabbitMQ in that case. And then again, Logstash forwarder indexers. Indexes read from RabbitMQ. Indexes are again forwarders that is storing the data on Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch have multiple indexes for storing these logs that are coming from different kinds of applications that have onboarded Scribe. And Kibana is reading from the Elasticsearch, which is the database of all this data. And yeah, teams are making use of this Kibana to build their visualization dashboards. And this is how we are making use of telemetry. So these are all the service level indicators. This is two sets scenarios which I've posted here, but teams can build their own visualizations to understand what is the error rate for an application, what is the response times, and at what rate are they responding for an incoming request, and at what rate are they producing to their next service. All these kinds of visualizations they can set up based on what they are logging, and they can use it. Also, alerting is also available on these dashboards, which the teams can make use of. And the next would be the state machines. So multiple companies are onboarding to cloud now, mainly because they have the flexibility to onboard how many servers they can. Like, coming to that point, not always the loads on all the servers are the same. So in our case, at night, mainly for the US and Canada customer base, when the load is very low at night, we usually scale down. So this is important because not many resources can be consumed, and also the cost would be effective. Because we are making use of both private and public cloud, it is again metering how many servers, how many cores, how much CPU, how much memory, what all is we are using, we are built based on that. So in order to avoid such scenarios, what we have is like schedule scaling. So we know these times, going by specific pattern, we'll know, okay, at these times the CPU is very high, the consumption is very high, then number of requests coming from consumers is very high. That time we scale up. And when there is no, we know when there is downtime, when customers don't browse during some times, we scale down the number of servers. That way, we can make sure how we can save how much ever possible. And also, the communication between the application and the database component. So again, based on a specific pattern, we'll know, okay, the application servers, at what rate they are interacting with the database servers. Are they using a cache copy? If so, number of requests going to the databases can be avoided. So only the database servers can be scaled down in such cases. So based on all those specific patterns, we are making use of scaling and also elasticity feature of the cloud. So scale up and scale down whenever needed, and also like the independence of the components, not major very strong dependency across the components. How can that be minimized is what the state machine is all about. Coming to the reliability, what is reliability? So what happens is during our peak season, which is the Thanksgiving. So for although Thanksgiving falls in November in the US, so the tests begin way before 6 or 8 months. So what we kind of do is there is like a regular schedule of load testing and stress testing that goes to all the components that is involved in the customer journey of a product. So the systems are they are stressed upon how much ever they can handle the request. Thrice to 4 times of that requests are sent to those systems to determine their where they crash, and those points are those points will get addressed. So what happens is some systems or all the systems, so they will be performant for whatever time period that is, and with how much ever requests that go in for a system. So those systems are said to be reliable, and And yeah, like the CPU, memory, all the system metrics, they will be at very steady throughout the time. And when these systems cannot handle, say like they receive as I mentioned, 4 to 5 times of the expected traffic, that's when they start crashing. And that is the point that we need to understand, okay, what is the majority number of requests a system can take, and at what stage are the systems breaking. So this is like how reliable is our product, how reliable is the infrastructure, how reliable is our system that can handle the request that comes in. So all these are like very much planned for handling the holiday season, because Walmart is at such a large scale that during the Thanksgiving, or 1 week before and 1 week after, we see like enormous like 5x 6x of the OPM of what we see. Like year by year, there will be like 110% of rise in the OPMs. So every year it is a challenge to accommodate the traffic that comes in. So like uh, as I mentioned, the stress test that we run, the load test that we run, so that test for all kinds of scenarios. And mainly it is about breaking a system and then building it even more to be stronger. Yeah, so continuing on, so what constitutes a reliable product? So that would be again grow from incidents. So as I mentioned, all these stress tests and load tests that we run, so majority of the cases, like there will be scalability, there will be a scalable schedule that is set. So if the number of requests peak, the systems will automatically start scaling. But there will be certain issues, such as like the communication between different services won't be going through, or there will be like a corner case wherein the system had to behave in a certain way, an application had to respond in a certain way and it did not. So all those observations will be made and then they will be addressed upon. So one recent issue that I can think of is what had happened was recently one of the data centers was down, and then we as I mentioned, the centralized the DevOps dashboard that our teams use, so it has like its own alerting mechanism, like an alerting integration. So that was generating like a lot of alerts, mainly like 4,000 alerts, because we have like 200 300 services onboarded to the dashboard. So why one of our teams flagged us, telling, okay, this tool is generating a lot of alerts, and then it is causing impact for rest of the Walmart, because they are not able to page out. Our DevOps dashboard integration itself is generating a lot of alerts. We are getting maxed out on the alerting. So we had to go through how to solve this kind of issue. First, what we did was we analyzed, okay, why these many alerts are getting generated. Is it a specific service that's alerting, or what kind of service, what kind of breach is happening for so many alerts to get generated? And this is and we went through it, and we saw kind of some loopholes, such as systems were alerting on CPU. So that systems were not to blame on, because they were locally not running anything. It was just Kafka streams. It was consuming and then it was producing. So basically, yeah. So that system alerting was disabled for that system, and then localhost checks alerting was disabled for few of those, because those teams were not making use of that feature. So and some other tweaks were made. And then we reported back the solution back to the team that had flagged us. So all these issues that comes up, so those are kept track, and then those will be addressed one after the other, which makes like a history of, okay, what went on, what was the fix that was applied during this time, or like we can go back and check and correct ourselves for the next time if anything happens like that again. And moving on to the health probes and checks, like how I mentioned earlier, there should be some health checks enabled for all the applications. So the more stronger the health check, the better it is for an application. Because if you just send a GET request, you will know an application response. But what if the application is using a database and if the database is down? So you will never know, because you'll be sending a GET request, application will be responding, but you don't know what's happening with the database. So it is always important to make sure you have a strong health check, preferably the application if it makes a request to the database or any other dependent system, so that you can test 3 or more different pieces in one specific health check, and maintaining the logs. So what happened recently was our Kibana was down, and Kibana was down, and yeah, there was some process that had got stuck. So we have like multiple services of Kibana, and on one node it was happening. Um, like the Kibana S3 outlogs, what we have, so that helped us out to figure out what the issue was. So it is always important to write maximum things into a log, like at all the levels, info, warning, at all the levels. The more you write the logs, the more it will be easier for you to troubleshoot what the issue is, and the fix also can be made quickly. And yeah, track exceptions and retries. So this, as I mentioned earlier, whenever an application errors out, you will have to, like, it's an iterative approach wherein you fix the issue and then yeah, it resolves. Sometimes it doesn't, because there will be some other use case that you would not have addressed. So you will have to make use of the try catch finally blocks to understand the like the error and the exception better, and you can go about fixing it. Define alerts. Yes, so whatever you feel is important use case for your application, say when an error rate goes beyond a certain threshold, or when the response times or the latencies, all these goes beyond a certain threshold, and it is important for you to get notified. You will have to define alerts in order to serve the customers better and to know what the problem is beforehand. Otherwise, it would look bad if one of your consumers notifies you about the issue. Like, if they come back and tell you, oh, this system is not responding, you would not even know. Only after they tell you, if you go and check, that would look bad on you. So it is always better to be prepared than fixing it later. Limit the number of requests. So earlier, while I was discussing about the graceful degradation, I mentioned what if number of requests are getting bumped to a server more than it can handle, and you would not have set up scaling. Like the system just crashes because it was not able to handle the request. So in that case, what you can define is how many connections can be established for a specific server. Because for any application, there would not be just one instance of the server running. There would be multiple instances of the server running. So what if you limit those requests? What if you limit the number of connections that can be established from a specific server? Or what if you implement like a scaling? Okay, scale up these number of pods or these number of servers when the CPU reaches a certain threshold, or when the request per server reaches a specific number. So then the customer experience would also be better, and application also responds well. Like if there is latency, the application goes slow, and it would impact multiple customers having to browse across your product or having to use your application. So that would not be a good customer experience. Analyze customer pain. So what we usually do is we usually discuss with our customers on a regular basis what regarding our product, what is the issue and what new features are to be added, or what are the like the pain points, what are they noticing as of now. Any navigation is an issue or anything that has to be understood on the site is an issue. All this have to be discussed regularly with our customers. Mainly whenever a new feature goes through, we will have to get feedback on what it is. So once we get the feedback, it also helps us to plan in the future better. Okay, what kind of customers we have, what are we looking at, what are they expecting. So once you start communicating with your customers, you'll know their mindset, and you'll also get in their path. Okay, this is what they're looking at, this is what we'll have to do. So all these kinds of planning you can do once you understand what your customer thinks about the product or any new feature that you have worked on. Yeah, this is another aspect called the chaos engineering. So this, as I mentioned earlier, yeah, it is more like a stress test wherein the systems are breached to reach their maximum limit. And once they do, we understand like what went wrong, what could have been better, and like what could have been better, and how to design the systems, how to make sure the systems are like independent of each other. And yeah, it would again help us to plan for our holidays. Like when does the system breach itself, at what point, at what rate, at what request the system goes bad. All these helps us to plan for our holidays. We follow this as part of our stress test that I talked about earlier. This is another important aspect for reliability. This is the monitoring, alerting, and the logging piece. So this was what I was talking about earlier. All of our apps onboard, all of our apps within our org, they onboard their apps to the dashboard. And yeah, dashboard uses Ansible to pull out the scripts, monitoring scripts on all the servers, and uh, using the queuing mechanism, these metrics get stored on a database, and Grafana is the visualization tool that reads metrics from the database, and then it populates it on the dashboard. And as far as the logging piece, which I spoke about earlier, so we use Scribe for logging. The applications will have to subscribe to Scribe to the location where they are writing logs to, and then using the suitable queuing mechanisms, we stored this logs on the Elasticsearch. And Kibana is one of the visualization tools that we use to read the data that is stored on the Elasticsearch and display the data. Yeah, this is what I wanted to discuss on the resiliency and reliability, how systems are built in Walmart, and how millions of customers' requests are being handled every day with such systems. So even, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, even if one of the systems fail, there should not be any impact to the customer experience. That like there should be a seamless experience for the customer would not even know what is going on in the backend. When a customer is about to browse or add something to cart or check out a product, it should be like a complete experience. There should not be any glitches in between. And this is how we ensure that such products, such customer experience is available to our customers at Walmart. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for an amazing webinar. Neha. It was really very, very informational, and I personally learned a lot.
Thank
And we have a few questions for you.
Okay.
We'll quickly go through those. Someone asked, in such an architecture, will Kafka become your single POF? What happens if Kafka goes down?
Okay. Yeah, so what we are doing is nowadays, even now, if Kafka goes down, so we have systems that is deployed on multiple data centers. So we plan in such a way that the app and the Kafka is on both the data centers, so the latency is also avoided, and like the producers and consumers will all be on the same data center. Even if one Kafka system goes down on one data center, it would not impact, because the other data center, the systems will still be producing to the other data center, and the consumers will be reading from reading and writing on a different data center. So it would not impact. But what we are further working on is, say if one data center goes down, so the retention period of the messages that is stored on Kafka would be, assume it is 4 hours. So if a data center is down beyond 4 hours, the messages would get lost. So what we are working on is having these messages replicated to another available data center, so that consumer offsets can be modified to read from this replicated topic, and then it can read. So there would not be any loss of data. So this is how we are planning to have the replication. But as of now, even if one data center goes down, the systems will still be producing and consuming from a different data center. But yeah, the replication, that's a challenge. That's a challenge because like the data rate that is coming in for any topic, so that is in terms of giga and tera. So we can't afford to have the replicated copy of that much size for a longer duration. So how we filter is how we filter, what mechanism we use to store that much amount of data, or partial of that much amount of data. So that is something we are working on now. But yeah, that is a long term solution is what we are looking for.
I see, I see. So, in your experience, how often does Kafka go down?
Kafka has never gone down, but all our systems are using Kafka. But the surprising thing is, so we have something called like the services are tiered, uh, if in our org or in Walmart as general. So tiered meaning the tier 0 services. So those are the services that are used mainly for the customer journey. So that would be like when you're searching for something or browsing, or when you put something to your cart, or when you're checking out an order, and the thank you page that you receive while after placing the order. So all these services that are included in this flow, they do not make use of Kafka. So even if Kafka goes down, our customer experience will never be impacted, and customers can still go and place the order. So that won't be an issue. But yeah, so far Kafka has never gone down. It is just like a precautionary approach that we are taking, um, to further build upon the active configuration of Kafka as of now, what we have.
I see, I see. So, in such a system, is your load balancer the POF?
No, load. Every data center will have, so at the top level, like when you imagine Walmart.com, so at that level, there is like a FQDN. So at the, like, when you request something, your request comes to the FQDN, and then the FQDN will determine, okay, what data center you are near to, and then it will route the request to that DC level FQDN, and then it comes to the load balancer. Load balancer would be at the top level, and then every application will internally resolve to a load balancer. So load balancers are also not single point of failure. every DC will have a load balancer, and above every DC there is an FQDN again. So that is also each DC will have an FQDN. So even if one DC goes down, the rest of the DC should still be able to handle the traffic.
I see, I see. Thank you like so much for explaining that, Neha. We have one more question here. Who generally comes up with SLIs? Is it the team that makes this feature, or is there a separate like SRE or platform team which helps with this?
Usually, like the system SLIs, if the CPU is spiking on a system, that would be mainly the SREs to determine, okay, what is wrong, why is there always CPU spike on so and so application, what is causing it. So those would be mainly the SREs, but as a trend for an application, okay, this is what is expected. That is basically by the PMs that we have worked on so far. Yeah, like the PMs give us a requirement. Okay, this is what is expected. This is the latencies. This much is the SLAs. All those will be given by the PMs as part of the requirement document.
I see, I see. And I think like that's all we had in terms of question. I'm just going over the chat in case someone had a few more questions for you. Um,
Sure.
So the app dev team set up SLIs and alerting dashboard themselves.
Uh, Alerting dashboards. Like the visualization dashboards, they can set up, and they can set up the alerts on top of those dashboards as well. Yes, but yeah, like the DevOps team will also help them with setting up whatever if they have any new tools, such as, for example, the Prometheus. Assume so the app teams would not be knowing how to make use of Prometheus. What is Prometheus? In that case, even the DevOps teams would be creating a POC and then helping out the teams to create the dashboards. But yeah, that would be only for the setup. From then onwards, the application teams will have to create dashboards using Prometheus. Yes.
Yes, that's I guess very interesting answer. So like one more question we had is how long does the planning take to design such system? How has your system evolved over time, and do you build system that can evolve easily?
It is never easy to build systems that evolve easily. I mean, like, yeah, again, it's an iterative approach. You will start something from scratch and then start building on top of that. In Walmart, I would say how we go about is we see who are our customers, and then how do we cater to them? How can we make that experience better? And what producer systems are we taking the data from, and what systems are we dependent on. So based on that, we will start designing our systems. Mainly like the databases, how can the latency be reduced when using database or caching? How can we make a better use of caching? Like the consistencies. What if what if there is a glitch in one of the data center? What if I cannot read a cached value from the cache when like a network partition happens? So all those things will be taken into account. SLAs will be defined. So as long as the timeouts are within the SLAs, that should still be okay. But only if there is a breach, that's when the issues will start.
Got it, got it. Yeah, true. I think that's all. So thank you so much, Neha. I know that we've taken quite a bit of your time today. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining in the session. Do join us for the next session next week when Neha will go over the part 2 of this session. Neha, do you want to give like a little bit of an intro of what you will be maybe going through?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I would be covering the scalability and the availability topics for the next week. Like what constitutes scalability, like in terms of how systems can multiply themselves, how can they grow, in terms of infrastructure or code or data, how to accumulate that as part of as part of the customer request, how to accumulate the growth, that yeah that one of that, and also availability, what is important for a system to achieve four nines or three nines, and what is the current state at Walmart, how have we been progressing every year through the holidays. Yeah, this is what I would be covering.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I think scalability is something that everyone wants to hear about. So, yeah, so Neha, thank you so much for joining in again. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
giving us
Archana.
wonderful
Thanks for
content.
giving me this opportunity. It
No,
was
no.
very good.
We are very like grateful for having you. And yeah, do stay tuned for the recording. We'll be posting it on YouTube. And apart from that, do join us for session 2, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, wonderful night, wherever you're joining us from. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Have a good